This is my final project. I'm looking at change detection for Everglades National Park. My big question is how has the Everglades changed over time? We have Landsat data between 1977 and 2019, and have conservation efforts started to make a difference to reclaim habitat and urbanization and farming. As you can see in the picture, the Everglades used to be significantly larger, and you can see Lake Okeechobee has taken a toll as well. The primary reasons for habitat loss are alteration of water flow. The canal system will bring water to where people want it, so it will cause drought in dry season and floods in wet season, and the unnatural timing, location, and volume of water doesn't make the plants and animals happy for their normal mating seasons. Then there's agricultural pollution. The Everglades are naturally low in nutrients, and phosphorus and nitrogen, which are byproducts of farming, are the most common nutrients that limit the growth of aquatic plants. So instead you'll get algal growth instead. And scientists found that in the northern Everglades have huge concentrations of phosphorus, and that's affected a lot of the northern portions. And the last item is urbanization. As you can see from the last picture, that there's just a huge loss of natural landscape and drainage areas. The key conservation efforts we can look at are the addition of 100,000 acres to the east side of the national park, the South Florida Water Management and landowners of Everglades agricultural area did a lot of work to reduce the amount of phosphorus in the northern part of the Everglades. That was by building 9 water treatment plants, and they did a lot of work there. The last item, which has been going on in planning for many years but just started going underway, is a 3-part modified water delivery plan. It's in 3 increments, and they have built a series of gauges, control pumps, and canals that will alter the water flow in an attempt to make it more natural and better the timing. And so right now we're in increment 2, and then the next plan for increment 3 is to take all of that data and come up with a sustainable plan. The data I'm using for this project is, I'm taking 10-year increments, nearly. I had some issues with clouds, but I'm taking data during peak rain season, so that's somewhere between August and late September, and I'm taking data from 1980, 1990, 1999, 2008, and 2016. The sources are from the different Landsat satellites. I'll be using a wide swath of them, so I'll use 1 through 3 and then all the way up to 8, and I took my data from Earth Explorer. I'm concentrating on southern Florida region south of Lake Okeechobee. Some main consideration is to take into consideration are that the changes have started occurring to the natural water flow since the 1880s, and since we only have Landsat data for the last 50 years, there's no stable period to capture the Everglades. So any data that I take will be a snapshot, and there's no base to compare back to, which made it difficult in doing the analysis. And then also we talked about the wet and dry season, peaks and subsides. Down here you can see a plot of the 1 year and then a plot over many years. So the wet season can be wetter, the dry season can be drier, but it will be the easiest basis to compare on for this project. As I said, I'm using data from different Landsats. So in one of them, when I calculate my NDVI data, which is near infrared, which uses near infrared and red bands, I will be taking different band numbers depending if I'm on Landsat 1 through 5, 4 through 5, or 8. And that's just important to consider when looking through data. The main steps I used to produce results for this project is I downloaded data, I merged the layers for each date, and I remove clouds as needed. It turns out that I went back and downloaded years around the target year just to have the least clouds I could find. I also took dates from a big range, so I didn't just focus on like the first date in August. I took dates over a couple months so I could get the least clouds I could. Later in the presentation I focus on an area where there are very minimal clouds, but I think will be a bigger step in future projects, is to actually remove the clouds. Then recolor, so we can see what we're looking at. The next major step is to visualize the change. I merged the near-infrared bands of sequential sets, and then a recolor to visualize change. So that's when I was looking at purple and green to just visually see what the change is. And then I did the NDVI calculations, which we talked about, which was the near-infrared and red bands. And then that was important with a different Landsat number. And then I subtracted the sequential sets from each other. I also subtracted the 2016 set and the 1980 set so we could get a big what has changed in the park. And then again set proper color breakpoints using the histogram. Then lastly, analyze the results and make conclusions. Here are results. This initial plot just looks at the entire park. So up here at the top, this one's a little easier to see. You can see Lake Okeechobee, and then here's the outline of the Everglades. And this is all NDVI data. So what I'm just doing right now is showing you the snapshots. So the first one was difficult to discern. Between 1980 and 1990, there's an awful lot of red. As far as I can tell, there was no drought in 1990. There was no excess of what's called the red tide, which plagues Florida, and that's high algal bloom. As we can see, it's not just affecting the park. It seems to be all of southern Florida. I think more information will need to be collected to determine what was happening in 1990. And then, I guess these two plots are linked. 1990 was apparently a very dry year for plants. So in 1999, everything became much greener. The last two plots between 1999 and 2008 and 2008 and 2016 appear a lot more stable. One interesting thing to note, though, in the 1999 to 2008 is we do see a lot of blue in the Lake Okeechobee and Gulf of Florida region. This could be due to algal blooms, which happen in these regions quite often. You can also see a little bit down in the southern part of the Everglades. Next, this is a zoomed in portion. So right now I'm coming up here to the northern part of the Everglades. This is where I was expecting to see a change due to the phosphorus levels, because 50% is a big change, and so we might expect to see less greenery because of fewer algal blooms. Or maybe we see healthier plants. It might be hard to determine, but we're expecting to see a change. So right now I'm just looking at 1980 to 2016, and this is just the near infrared. So purple is a loss from 1980, and green, it shows what's new. It's hard to tell within the park. You can see clouds, which we're going to ignore. Obviously been a lot of changes around, but the park itself seems to be fairly purple but remain consistent. Here's the NDVI data. Again, you can see lots of changes outside. Inside the park looks fairly the same. On the right side you can see a little bit more red, and on the left side you can see a little bit more blue, but there's no big changes that seem to have occurred or information to draw between these two dates. So in conclusion, I was unable to answer how the Everglades National Park has changed. It's difficult to discern the changes based on snapshots of time. There are a lot of factors that can affect the land and no average to base off. I was hoping that key conservation efforts would show change, but I was unable to pick them out. In order to improve on this project, I think there needs to be more background research. So what happened in 1990? I did a good amount of research into periods of algal tide, into drought and rainwater, and general Googling of 1990 Florida. And I think there just needs to be more research there to see why some of these changes occurred. Unfortunately, that's outside the scope of time of the project. So in order to draw more inclusive insights, I think more frequent snapshots need to be taken, and clouds need to be removed, and then you'll get cleaner data and it'll be easier to understand the change. Here are my references, and thank you for listening.